Not every world buries its dead. Some worlds cradle them instead, holding loss like a seed in wet soil, waiting for breath to return. On the marsh planet of Kiral 5, the ground remembers everything. Mist curled low, weaving through reeds like ghostlight. Kael moved carefully alone, the way he always was. His boots sank into the waterlogged sediment, each step a soft whisper. The scanner unit on his back thumped lightly with his motion, but he barely noticed. The silence weighed heavier. He paused near a collapsed bluff just past the southern delta. A landslide had cut through it 2 weeks prior, and this morning, a faint ping pulsed through the survey grid. Probably wildlife or a faulty relay node. Still, Kael's gut told him to check. He swept his handheld scanner over the slumped terrain. A red pulse blinked back. Organic signature. Faint. Child-sized. Heart rate minimal. Kael didn't think. His body moved first. He dropped to his knees and pulled his soil cutter from its sheath. The ground was slick, tangled with vines and sediment. It took over half an hour to break through the upper layers. Then he saw it. The edge of a survival pod, compact and half-crushed, but intact enough to have retained pressure. He cracked the emergency latch. Inside was a girl, small, blue-skinned, tangled in debris and thermal fabric worn thin by time. Her hair, a striking shade of ember red, curled around her like vine tendrils. Mud smeared her cheeks. A thin bracelet glowed faintly on her wrist, its biolight pulsing in time with something fragile. Kael reached in gently. Her skin was cold, lips cracked, but the pulse was still there. She flinched at his touch, reflexive, but didn't wake. He exhaled. "I've got you," he said softly, though no one could hear. He wrapped her in his jacket and lifted her out. She barely weighed more than memory. At the medical bay, the lights hummed low. Kael stepped inside, the girl bundled in his arms. "Urgent intake," he told the medtech. "Found a miner in a downed pod on the southern bluff. Vitals are weak. She hasn't spoken." The nurse scanned her. Her eyes narrowed. "Wait." She scanned again. "That's not possible." "What's wrong?" Kael asked. She checked the ID once more, and her face went pale. "This child, she's registered as deceased. Death log filed 15 days ago, by her own mother." Kael looked down at the sleeping girl. "That can't be." The nurse swallowed. The bracelet must have triggered a metabolic defense response. It's rare in Alari species. Silent slumber. Shuts everything down. Breath, metabolism, even light signals. How long can someone survive like that? She hesitated. 10 days is theory. 15 is a miracle. Her mother came to the grave every second day. Ritual held her together. She knelt in silence, pressed her palms to the braided grass atop the memory ring. It was all she had left. The voice, the warmth, the stories, all gone. Only this. The girl's name had once been Nira, and her mother, Silen, still whispered it. The mist pressed around her, damp and unrelenting. Silen's cloak clung to her frame, waterlogged and fraying. She recited the names of her foremothers softly, her voice cracking in the middle. "I should have held you tighter," she whispered to the soil. Then something shifted behind her. She didn't move. Grief had tricked her before. A sound, a breath, too familiar to be real. She turned. Kael stood just beyond the circle of memory stones, soaked from shoulder to heel. In his arms was the girl, red hair, blue skin, still as a statue. Silen's body failed her, her knees buckled. Her hands caught the earth. She could barely breathe. Kael stepped forward and knelt. He unwrapped the girl slowly. Nira's face, thin and pale, emerged. Silen reached for her, hesitant. Her fingers trembled above her daughter's skin. She couldn't touch, couldn't believe. "I buried you," she whispered. "They told me." Then the small hand reached up and touched her cheek. Everything inside Silen shattered. She pulled her daughter to her chest and wept. Not soft tears, wild ones. Her body shook, her voice cracked. She tore the mourning thorns from her braid. Blood beaded on her palm, but she didn't notice. "Rain falls," she whispered, reciting the old verses. "Stone glows, shell opens, flame keeps. You found the way back." And Nira, half asleep, hummed the final notes in return. Silen didn't sleep that first night. She sat beside the clinic cot, knees pulled close, arms tight around her own body. Her eyes never left the child. She was alive, but barely. Skin still dull, breath shallow. The bracelet pulsed softly. Kael sat just outside the room, his back to the wall, not speaking. But Silen could feel him, steady, present, quiet like gravity. The lights dimmed at night cycle. The breeze shifted the vapor curtain. Then a sound, a hum, broken, uncertain. The tune Silen once sang when Nira was no more than skin and breath. Her mouth trembled. She cried then, not from grief, something harder. Hope. By morning, Nira stirred again. The doctor, a broad-shouldered woman named Harla, checked the readings. She's stabilizing, she said. No language yet, but her vitals are back. Silent sleep disrupts neural rhythm, but the body remembers. Silen just nodded. Harla glanced at Kael. You found her? Scanner picked up a weak signature under the bluff. Something told me not to ignore it. Harla smiled faintly. That something saved her life. Silen looked down at the bracelet. We bonded it before the storm, she said. Bone trace, breath rhythm, memory seal. Harla's eyes softened. Then maybe that's what held her. Not her body, her soul. Later that day, Nira's eyes opened fully. Silen knelt beside the bed. Can you see me? She asked. The girl didn't answer, but her gaze found her mother's and stayed there. Her fingers moved, brushed the space between them, and landed softly on Silen's hand. Silen folded over, kissed those small fingers, her child's brow, her hair, again and again. Kael still stood in the doorway. She knows you too, he said. Silen looked up, tears in her throat. She was waiting for you, he added. We both were. The days after Nira's return passed like dreams wrapped in fog. Silen barely moved from the clinic bench. She watched her daughter sleep under soft light, swaddled in vapor-threaded linens. The pale blue glow in Nira's cheekbones flickered on and off, slowly sinking again with life. Kael remained outside the room most of the time, his silhouette a constant through the glass, arms folded or resting on his knees, eyes always alert. He didn't speak unless needed. He didn't leave. That mattered. The clinic lights dimmed automatically at midpoint. Silence settled, then a melody. Hesitant, fragile. It was the lullaby Silen used to hum during nest phase, when Nira was still a bundle of breath and heartbeat in her arms. Now it came from the girl again, quiet but steady. Silen pressed her hand to her mouth and wept, silently, the kind of tears that come when fear begins to lift. The next morning, Kael returned with 2 thermal flasks. He placed one beside Silen without speaking. She didn't reach for it. Nira stirred in her sleep, her tiny frame twitching like muscle memory was returning. The doctor checked her vitals, nodded to herself. She's metabolizing again, she said. No language yet, but that's expected. Silent slumber slows everything, even cognition, but the body's catching up. Silen didn't respond. The doctor adjusted the child's hydration port, then looked at Kael. You carried her out, right? Kael nodded once. Harla leaned on the edge of the cot. What made you stop and check? Most would have ignored a weak ping under that bluff. Kael's voice was soft. It felt like something was asking me to listen. Silen turned to the doctor. She shouldn't have survived. Harla paused. I'm not sure she fully did. Her body entered full response hypostasis, near zero function. Theoretically, that's fatal, but her bracelet held. She was still linked. Silen's fingers touched her own wrist gently. We bonded before the storm. I felt it break, but maybe it didn't. Harla nodded. That thread saved her. Maybe not with science, but with memory. Silen hadn't spoken about the storm, not to anyone, not even to herself. But that night, with Nira resting and Kael sitting quietly by the field kit, she finally let the words out. The officer told me no one could have survived, said the shelter was compromised, said it was better I didn't go look. Kael stopped sorting tools but didn't interrupt. I went anyway, she said, through 3 zones, ignored curfew, rain like knives. The bluff was sinking by then. Roots rotting, earth folding. She stared at her lap. I kept calling her name. I think I stopped using words at some point, just sounds. I dug with my bare hands until they bled. Rescue crew didn't come until sunrise. She paused. I found the braid myself, tangled on the hatch hinge, torn in half. Kael's voice was gentle. Did you believe she was really gone? Silen's eyes glistened. I had to. Not because I was sure. Because if I hoped and was wrong again, it would have killed me. They sat in silence. It was not empty. Do you remember what I said to you at the grave? She asked. Kael nodded. You called her your little sky lantern. She said the rain knew her name. Thought it followed her around because it liked her songs. Silen turned to the window. A slow drizzle traced the glass like fingers. I thought the rain mourned her, she said, but maybe it was carrying her back. Kael shifted, leaned forward. Can I ask something? She tilted her head slightly. When I brought her to you, why didn't you run? Scream? Why did you just kneel? Her smile was soft, because miracles shouldn't be met with noise. She looked down at Nira. And because I was afraid if I moved too fast, I'd wake up and she'd vanish. Kael said nothing. But later, when Silen stood and crossed the room, her steps were lighter than they'd been in weeks. She brushed a strand of red hair from her daughter's face. Outside, the rain started again. Not hard, just steady, like it meant something. It had been 4 days since Nira fully woke. 4 days since her first word, whispered in the night. Here. Since then, words came in fragments. Color names, half songs, small questions. That morning, Silen stepped outside for the first time. She found Kael near the equipment bay, checking supplies, his face unreadable as always. She said simply, I'm coming with you. Kael met her eyes, searched for hesitation. You sure? Number. But I'm going anyway. They walked beneath a leaden sky. The marshland was soft, the trail narrow. The signal Kael had picked up was faint. No movement, but unmistakable. Nira stayed at the clinic with the matron, who understood that sometimes healing requires absence too. As they moved, Silen glanced sideways. You never told me what brought you to Kael. Kael kept his eyes on the scanner. Same as most people, he said. Lost something. Thought I could bury it here. Did it work? Number turns out, grief follows you. Even underground. She nodded slowly. We believe that too. That's why Alari burial uses bond light, to warn the land. Kael's voice lowered. I had a family, wife, daughter, 3 years old. Earthquake at Western Station. I'd flagged a stability fault, but the AI cleared it. 2 days later, their dome collapsed. Silen didn't speak. I stopped trusting machines after that, Kael said. Started mapping by hand. Alone. She looked at him. That's why you were out there when you found her, and that's why you didn't leave. He didn't deny it. You thought maybe if you stayed long enough, another child wouldn't die like yours did. He nodded once. And you? He asked. Silen took a breath. I was a diplomat once. Capital Moon. Believed words could hold peace. Her fingers flexed in the mud. But when the orbital fires came, they didn't spare talkers. Nira's father, he wasn't a soldier, just near the wrong shuttle at the wrong time. She looked up at the broken bluff in the distance. Nira was born after that. No flag, no nation, just silence. Kael swept the scanner. And yet you still taught her songs. Silen smiled, not with joy. Even silence needs sound to survive. The scanner beeped sharply. They found the source beneath a tangled knot of roots, another pod. Fractured, cold, a strip of biowire pulsed faintly. Silen touched it. No heartbeat. But it was recent. Kael sighed. We're not too late. Just the next chapter. They sat in the mud a long while. She used to ask why the other children didn't glow, Silen said. Why her skin changed colors when the rain came. I told her it was because her body remembered things the machines forgot. Kael looked at her. That sounds like truth. Silen checked her own wrist. Her bond light had faded over the years. But now, just for a moment, it flickered again. They returned at dusk. Rain steady now, not violent, but with weight. Nira hummed in her sleep. Kael sat near the window, watching the scanner flicker. A signal chirped weakly. Another ping. Still buried. He frowned. Not fear. Resolve. There were more voices under the mud, and he wasn't done listening. The rains came hard that night, not in sheets, but in intention. Every drop heavy, every gust deliberate. It wasn't just weather, it was pressure building towards something unseen. Kael stood on the outer deck of the clinic, watching rivulets form where the ground shouldn't sink. Inside, Silen sat at the edge of Nira's cot, brushing her daughter's hair into a fresh braid. The girl hummed softly, the tune uneven but growing stronger each time she sang it. A warning buzz echoed on Kael's scanner. Water levels were rising fast, faster than expected. He stepped through the door. "We need to move her," he said. Silen looked up. Her hands didn't falter. "Where?" "Relay tower. Upland. Reinforced and high." She wrapped Nira in a thermal sheet, lifted her carefully. "We'll make it." Kael hesitated. "You're sure she's strong enough?" Silen's eyes flared with something sharp and quiet. "She's carried worse than water." They moved quickly. Wind screamed against the canopy. Rain stung like gravel. Kael carried most of the gear. Silen carried Nira. The girl said nothing as they crossed the marsh ridge. She just stared, wide-eyed, taking in every flicker of storm light and broken trees. The tower sat 3 clicks upslope. Normally an easy trek. Tonight it felt like climbing through a nightmare. By the time they reached it, they were soaked through. The magnetic lock on the door stuck under the wet, but Kael overrode it. The tower's interior was cold, dark, and metallic, but safe. Silen laid Nira on the bench. Kael brought the lights online, flickering, but enough. The child blinked. "Mama," she whispered, "the rain's louder up here." Silen kissed her forehead. "It only sounds louder when you're dry." Kael checked the backup generator. Silen unpacked emergency supplies, root cake, mineral water, thermal blankets. Thunder cracked hard overhead. "That's not a break," Silen said quietly. "That's the sky resetting." Kael exhaled. "Then we don't leave." He looked down at the thermal gear. "Only 1 blanket. I'll stay up. Keep moving. Not a big deal." Silen stood. She pulled back part of Nira's wrap. "Lie down," she said. Kael blinked. "What?" "You're soaked. If you freeze up, she'll have to watch it happen. We can't let her see that." He hesitated. Silen's voice softened. "I won't sleep either way. Just lie down." So he did, slowly, stiff, unsure, careful not to touch. But Silen moved closer, shifted her back against his chest, pulled the edge of the blanket over both of them. Her hair smelled like damp moss and sun-warmed leaves. Her body radiated the heat of someone who never let herself stop moving. Kael stayed still. Then, a small hand reached between them. Nira, half asleep. She rested her fingers on his chest, not asking, just anchoring. "Mama," she murmured, "when 2 people share a blanket, does that mean they're home friends now?" Silen didn't miss a beat. "Maybe it means they're not strangers anymore." Nira hummed contentedly, then slept. Kael closed his eyes, not to dream, but because, for once, he wasn't afraid to. The storm roared all night, but in the tower the wind was just sound, the rain just a rhythm. When dawn came, they didn't rush to move. Silen helped Nira eat, her voice light, her hands steady. Kael brewed filtered root water. They sat in the dim light as if the world outside couldn't touch them. But the moment passed quickly. The colony below had flooded, drainage systems failed, power cut out, and Nira's name still didn't exist in the medical logs. Silen stood near the vestibule, arms crossed, watching water drip from the outer canopy. Behind her, Nira played with a carved wooden sunbird Kael had made. Kael checked the signal lines again. "We're not staying," Silen said. Kael didn't look up. "I know. They won't protect her when the next disaster comes. They didn't protect her before." Kael nodded. "And they still won't admit she lived." "There's a way out," he said. "North Plateau. Colony called Calvin Ridge." Silen frowned. "That's 3 days, too," he said. "If we move quick." She raised an eyebrow. "It never holds." "Then we walk fast." Nira looked up. "Are we going somewhere?" Silen knelt beside her. "Somewhere better. With stars?" Kael smiled. If we walk far enough, yes. They left before first light. The trail north wound through broken stabilizer towers and moss-wrapped sensor posts. Nira rode half the time on Silen's back, half on Kael's shoulders. She laughed when he slipped in mud, called him Mud Boots. The name stuck. By dusk, they had climbed high enough to leave the worst of the water behind. They camped under the skeleton of a collapsed wind vane. Kael rigged a tarp. Silen started the heat core. Their meal was simple. Root stew, pressed grain cakes, shared evenly. Nira curled between them, breathing soft. Silen watched Kael across the fire. His sleeves were rolled up. Old scars traced his forearms. His boots were drying by the edge of the heat pocket. "You don't stop," she said. Kael looked up. "Stop what?" "Scanning. Listening. Mapping the world even when you're still." He shrugged. "Especially when I'm still. And yet you stay." Kael's expression didn't shift. "What else is there?" Nira stirred. Her voice was low, dreamy. "Mama, if we find a better home, will the birds there stay?" Silen leaned down. "If not, we'll stay long enough to teach them how." Nira smiled and drifted off again. Kael stared into the flames. "You never asked what you mean to me," Silen said suddenly. He looked up. Silent. "Maybe because I never said." She picked at a thread on her sleeve. Maybe because naming things felt dangerous. She looked up, eyes steady. "Now I keep waiting for you to leave, and it's starting to hurt more than the silence did." Kael exhaled sharply. "Do you want me to?" Silen shook her head. "I want to know if you'll stay when it's no longer dangerous to." He crossed the space between them in 2 steps. He knelt, didn't touch her, then reached and took her hand. "I didn't stay for her," he said. "I stayed because I saw someone carry sorrow like a sword and still sing lullabies. I stayed because I didn't want to walk away from the only map that led me home." Silen closed her eyes, leaned forward, rested her forehead to his. Neither spoke. Nira blinked sleepily. "Are you hugging without arms?" Silen laughed softly. "Yes, darling." Nira yawned. "Okay, just checking." Then she fell asleep again. That night the cold didn't matter, and for once, the future didn't feel so far away. The trail bent sharply after the high ridge. They moved through low marshlands where the water ran clear and reeds stretched taller than Nira herself. Each hour brought them closer to Calvin Ridge, their destination, a colony on elevated ground, mostly self-sufficient, rarely flooded. Kael had calibrated the route using an old military signal beacon, still working despite being mostly swallowed by roots. Nira giggled every time the scanner beeped. Late that morning, they passed an abandoned comm tower, its frame twisted like fossilized bone. "Old bones," Nira murmured, tapping its base. Kael glanced down, raising an eyebrow. "She means the structure," Silen explained. "In Alari culture, dead tech is called memory bone. Children learn shape before function." Kael nodded thoughtfully. "I like that." By mid-afternoon, Silen's skin began to tingle. "Pressure's shifting," she said quietly. Her collar's light dimmed slightly, her body's way of sensing storms long before the sky changed. Kael adjusted his readings. Storms close. They pushed faster, the brush thickening, the trail narrowing. When the first drops hit, they sounded like drumming fists. Loud, director, more than rain. They found shelter inside a sunken survey station, half buried in a hillside. The roof sagged but held. It was dry, barely. Kael secured the entrance with a stripped power bar. Silen lit the backup lantern. A soft glow filled the space. Nira sat cross-legged near a wrapped bundle of rations, arms tucked into her sleeves. Thunder cracked overhead, not a rumble. A punch. She jumped. Kael knelt beside her. "It's just sound, Starlight." "Big sound," she whispered. He offered his hand. She took it. No hesitation. Silen returned from the supply stack, holding a strip of dried root bread in a warm flask. "Eat slowly," she said, handing it to Nira. "We'll be out of here before the next sky turn." Then another thunderclap rolled through the walls. The roof's left seam cracked. A line of water slipped through a weak conduit and struck Kael's shoulder. He moved to redirect it. His boot slipped. He hit the ground hard, caught his knee against the bench. He swore softly, more from frustration than pain. Silen rushed over. "You're bleeding." "Not deep," he grunted, "but not nothing." She dropped beside him, peeled back his damp pant leg, unrolled the med wrap from her satchel, and cleaned the wound in silence. Her touch was practiced, gentle. As she wrapped the bandage, she stopped suddenly. Her breath caught. The skin of his thigh bore an old scar, curved like a crescent. Just below it, faded ink. 3 stick figures, 2 tall, 1 small, drawn in childlike strokes. Kael stilled. "You saw it." Silen didn't meet his eyes. "I think I always knew." She tied off the wrap and leaned back, sitting against the wall. "You carry everything, don't you?" Kael looked up at the ceiling. "Only what I can't put down." She reached out, took his hand, then shared the weight. Their fingers locked, uneven at first, then solid. They sat like that, close but not pressed, letting the storm settle into its rhythm. No urgency, no rush, just presence. Then a quiet shift, a kiss, not rushed, not trembling, not heat, but warmth, like something known finally being allowed. When they pulled apart, Silen gave a faint smile. "You're not what I expected from a man who maps the world." Kyle's voice was low. "And you're not what I expected from someone who lost everything." In the corner, Nira peeked from under her blanket. "Did you fall again, mud boots?" Kael laughed. "Only into your mother." Nira blinked. "That's high. You'll need good boots." Silen chuckled softly, brushing Nira's hair. "He has them, little star. And now, I have him." By dawn, the rain had faded into mist. They packed in practiced silence. But something had changed. Not the roles, the rhythm. Their movement flowed together. Natural. As if they had always been 3. The final stretch to Calvin Ridge sloped gently upward. When they crested the hill, the view stopped them in place. Terrace structures bloomed into view, built into the plateau like petals grown from stone. Solar sails shimmered in the breeze. Children's voices echoed from somewhere below. The air smelled dry, clean. Birdsong laced through the wind. Nira gasped. "It's real." Kael rested his hand on Silen's back. She didn't flinch. For once, they didn't rush the descent. They walked it together. Nira picked a flower from the ridge's edge, tucked it behind her ear, then looked up. "Can we stay long enough for the birds to know us?" Silen met her daughter's eyes, then looked at Kael. "Yes," she said. "We'll stay until they sing your name." The morning light in Calvin Ridge was unlike anything they'd known, golden and soft, spilling through open windows like a promise kept. Silen stood on the upper garden terrace, eyes half closed, breathing in the scent of warm stone and trail root in bloom. Behind her, solar petals turned slowly atop rooftops. Kael had gone to the registry dome to finalize placement. There had been no resistance, no questions, no doubts about Nira's status. Here, names were added, not erased. That morning, Nira's was etched onto the census sheet. Clean, unmarked, Nira, child of Silen. At the far edge of the terrace, Nira played with 2 other children, one human, one Alari. They built something from bark strips and irrigation tubing. They spoke in fragments of both languages. Nira's braid bounced as she ran, cheeks flushed with color. She turned, waved. "Mama, look! We made a glider that doesn't fall." Silen smiled. "Only if the wind is kind." "Then I'll sing it sweet," Nira called back. The door behind her hissed open. She didn't turn. She felt him. Kael stepped up beside her. "Approved," he said. "Plot 3, see South Slope. Quiet, sunny." Silen nodded. "Good roots, then." Kael grinned. "They asked if I had a family designation." She looked at him now. "What did you say?" "I said I was spoken for. And they didn't ask by who." He shrugged. "Didn't matter, they knew." Silen smiled. "I like this place." They stood there, not touching, not needing to. Silence here wasn't absence. It was fullness. "Will she remember this?" Kael asked, eyes on the children. Silen watched Nira duck beneath a line of sun-drying fabric. Her laughter echoed. "She already is," Silen said. "Every breath, every step forward. That night they gathered stones from the edge of the ridge, not to build a grave, not this time, but a circle, a memory ring. In the center, Nira placed a single stone from the old bluff, the one buried with her, the one she'd carried since. Kael etched a line across it, not buried, rooted, and beneath it, in uneven, careful letters, Nira added her name. The wind moved softly over the hilltop, brushing their shoulders, stirring the leaves, but the stone stayed, and so did they. Morning returned to Calvin Ridge the same way it always did in early bloom season. Quiet, golden, full of promise. Sunlight spilled between the garden slats, brushing across dew-bright leaves and seed markers freshly pressed into the soil. Kael stood with one hand on his back, adjusting a line of sprouting roots along their garden plot. The slope behind their home shimmered with warmth. The air held no warnings, only breath. Footsteps approached behind him. Light, bare, familiar. Nira. She was taller now, almost 7, her braid longer, a few strands already escaping in the wind. Her bone light glowed brighter in the mornings, as if even the sky remembered her now. She crouched beside him, not saying anything at first. Kael passed her the last pouch of seed. "Want to place the final ones?" She nodded. "You made the line crooked again." Kael smiled. "Crooked means real." She didn't argue. Together they pushed the seeds into the earth, software damp, ready. Kael straightened, stretching his back, then froze. A tiny hand rested lightly on his arm, not to balance, just to connect. Nira looked up at him. Plain, certain. "Dad, you missed one." She pointed to a bare patch past the final row. Kael didn't move right away, not because the word surprised him, but because of how natural it felt. She hadn't asked permission to say it, hadn't hesitated. One day, weeks ago, the word had simply arrived, tucked between small talk and trail songs, like it had always belonged. He had waited for the moment to feel unreal. It never did. Now she was already back to planting, humming softly. He crouched beside her and pressed a kiss to the crown of her head. "Thanks, little one. I would have missed it without you." Nira shrugged. "That's why you have me," a voice called from the porch. "Nira, breakfast's ready, and you promised to carry the tray this time. Silen." She stood framed by the morning light, one hand on her rounded belly. Movement rippled beneath the fabric. Quiet, strong. She wore a soft tunic, loose around the hips, her long red hair unbound, falling like river grass. Her skin shimmered faintly with bone light, brighter near her wrists. It always did when water was close. Nira raced toward her. "Coming." She wrapped her arms around her mother's side, careful but firm. Silen laughed, running her hand down her daughter's braid. "Did he plant them crooked again?" Nira nodded, like a snake path. Silen turned to Kael. "Snakes are sacred in Alari lore, you know. Symbols of memory. Renewal." Kael raised his hands. "Exactly as planned." She smiled softly. "It seems everything you do is." Later they sat together on the porch steps, plates warm in their laps. Nira sprawled across both of them, dozing in a pile of limbs and light. Kael's hand rested lightly on Silen's belly, tracing the curve gently. She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned into him. "He'll call you Dad," Silen murmured. Kael didn't reply right away. He watched Nira breathe, her chest rising and falling like waves. "I don't need him to," he said. "Not if he reaches for me the way she does." Silen turned toward him. "She will. Both of them will." And Kael believed her. That afternoon they walked back to the ridge behind the settlement, the same place where they built the ring of stones. The breeze was gentle. Kael carried a few new seedling pots. Silen brought bark twine and sun thread to wrap them. Nira held something carefully in her hands. A small carving Kael had made of a starlight bird. One of the few things she'd carried from their old world. They sat near the memory circle. The vines had started to grow through it already. Nothing buried, just growing. Nira placed the carving at the center. "So they know I came back here, not for sadness, for truth." Kael worked steadily that evening. Small solar lanterns surrounded the garden patch. Silen braided dried herbs into a wind catcher. Nira drew circles in the dirt and sang softly under her breath. When the first stars appeared, they didn't rush to find shelter. They stayed seated on the hilltop, arms linked, looking up. Quiet. Dad, Nira whispered sleepily. The stars are watching again. Kael looked at her, then at Silen. They never stopped, he said. And this time the stars didn't ask them to move, only to remain. The seasons changed gently in Calvin Ridge. With each passing week, roots stretched deeper into the earth. Trees swayed heavier with scent. Children's voices filled the alleys and terraces. New lines were drawn on the census. Births, arrivals, the start of something lasting. Kael worked part-time with the mapping division, charting water patterns and surveying future growth zones. Silen served as a liaison for the refugee registry. Her voice, once only whispers, now helped others find their way back into the world. And Nira, she became part of everything. She taught the local children the tunnel songs. She named the garden birds. She played with both Alari and human kids as though there had never been a time her name was forgotten. One morning she found Kael resting by the stream, eyes half closed. She sat beside him and held up a braid she'd woven herself. 2 threads, one blue, one brown. This is for Mom, she said. For when the baby comes. Kael took it gently. She'll love it. I'll teach the baby our songs, Nira said proudly. And if the birds forget me, I'll sing louder. Kael smiled. You already do. That night, as the air cooled and stars blinked into being, they sat again in their quiet spot near the circle. No longer refugees, no longer running, just 3 souls stitched together by grief, hope, and choice. Kael rested his hand on Silen's as she leaned into him, her other arm wrapped around Nira. The future didn't feel like something to fear anymore. It felt like something they were building, every name spoken, every stone placed, not buried, rooted.